Right, guys. Hi, good morning. So, what we're looking at now is this is question 52. Question 52, Sinclair. So let's just read through this and see where we're going here. So it says the Sinclair makes a single product, the DOM, you're the MA, and you're responsible for preparing its operating budgets. The accounting year is divided into 13 4-week periods. There are 5 days in each week. The sales director has recently completed the following forecast. So they believe that they can sell. That's the plan. The plan is to sell these units, if you like, in period 1, 2, and so forth. That's the plan. So similar to 51, when we start off with the selling, we now need to produce. We now need to produce these items. So let's look at the information we have. So it says to us that go ahead, go and make the items. But unfortunately, what will happen is that every time you make your items, you're always going to lose 3% of them. So it says on completion of the products, 3% of the DOMs are found to be faulty and have to be scrapped. And this is just sort of due to poor work practices. And it says these DOMs have no scrap value, so we can't put them. They'll never be part of inventory. So sort of selling them off for scrap. What we do have, we have an interesting scenario where we are told that in terms of finished goods, in period 1, we have some opening inventory of 3880. So, and we also have raw materials of this. So, but let's focus on the actual finished goods first. So, what do we have? What's the situation? So, the situation is that I start my day with 3,880 in period 1, and in period 1 there are 4 weeks. So, this is a 4-week period that we're talking about. Period 1. So, I have an opening period of 3880. I want to sell 19,400. So, I need to make sure I produce enough so that I have enough to compensate for this 3% loss, if you like, and get them pushed out to get to 19,400. But I also need to think about the fact that I'm not just producing to sell, but I also need to produce to make sure I have some ready for the next period. So they also give you some other information. The closing period set rules. So finished inventory must be equal to 4 days sales value in the next period. So here we have period 2, and period 2 here is a period of 4 weeks, and it tells you there's 5 days. So there's 20 days in each period. So they want you to keep 4 days of that 20-day sale for the next period and make that as closing inventory. So let's just work on that first. I think that's the first question. In fact, let's just talk about production. So I'm just going to come to this. I've actually been working on this and put a spreadsheet together, but I'm going to work through my spreadsheet now. So I just said, listen, we're dealing with a year where we're talking about 13 4-week periods. There's 4 weeks in a period, and there's 5 days in each week. So this is the sales forecast. This is what we intend on selling. So here we have our opening inventory given to us in this first case, and like I said, this is if you like, the selling that we intend on doing in period 2. So you can see here that I can calculate the closing inventory. So the closing inventory for period 1 is 4 days from 20 days times whatever I intend on selling in that next period, and that works out at 426. So what's the story here? So I'm going to have opening inventory. I want to sell these number of units. So I mean, I need to produce enough so that, and how have I worked this out? I've simply said, well, listen, B15, which is sales. So I need to produce these number of units, but I have this already in the warehouse. So I know I need to produce this, but start off with this and take away the opening inventory because you already have the opening inventory. So I need to produce, if you like, B15 minus the opening inventory, but I also need to produce enough, if you like, to cover the closing inventory. And I know what closing inventory has to be, so that's why I add on the closing inventory. So production is literally whatever it is I need to sell minus what I have already, because I'm not producing that, and plus what it is that we will need to cover for the next period. So that's how you get your production. I mean, there's a number of ways to think about it as well. I mean, that's a rational way of thinking about it. This isn't going to let me write. I'm going to have to save this. Let me save this so I can write, save a copy of this so I can write on it, browse, save that on my desktop. Um, yes, it's got that. And that should let me now. I'll just shut this down and open it again. 1 second. Let me open that again and allow me to draw on it. Um, the and what you really see me trying to do there. So now I have a draw button. So what you see me trying to do there is to sort of say that the other way of doing this, again, it's the standard way. It's opening inventory plus production minus closing inventory is equal to cost of sales, which is what you're selling, right? That's what's actually going out. So really, I know what this is. If this is just from a formularic point of view, 3880 plus I don't know what this is. That's what I'm trying to work out. Minus the closing inventory, which I've worked out being 4 days of 20 days of the next period. 4268 is equal to 19,400. What is P? What is P? And if you do all this, you will find that P is 19,788. Yes, when you rearrange this equation. Now, once you've done that, you now know this is what your perfect production is. This is the production that came out well, right? This is the production that came out well. But I needed to actually produce more because I was going to lose 3% of that. So this thing here, this 19,788 is equal to 0.97 or 97% of actual production, because what happened was I produced a certain amount, I lost 3% of it, and then I got this. So technically this is 100% minus the 3%, and I got the 19,788. The question is, what did you produce? So all I'm literally doing is just dividing this thing here, production, by 0.97, right? Or however you do it. So that you can see is just B13 divided by 0. So I actually produced 20,400, which means that what we're wasting technically is just the 20,400 minus the 19,788. And I literally just drag that across. So you can see that here, of course, my closing inventory becomes opening inventory. And I do the same thing here. I do 4 out of 5 days, 20 days for the next period, get that closing inventory. I know what I'm selling, do exactly the same process. If I'm going to sell this, well, I need to produce what I'm trying to sell less the opening inventory plus closing inventory, or apply exactly the same formularic methods. And again, once you get your production, you just need to divide that by 0.97 to get the original production. And then you have waste of 672. And so literally this just kind of drag this right across the table, and you should, if you like, have your production budget there. I mean, that's your actual production budget, to be honest. That's what you're actually producing. That's what you're actually producing. So I think it's important to pick up on that, and that's the wastage. So let me just go back to the question and see what they were asking for in the first question. So first question says, prepare the gross production budget, including faulty production, which we've done for each of the first 4 periods, if you like. And then the next question goes on to ask us to prepare the materials purchases budget in liters for each of the first periods, and we'll do that in a second. Okay, great stuff. So that was the first part. I just really paused to just give you some time to settle. Let's look at the raw materials. I mean, I do everything. It's all already prepped, but it's all here. So let's just look at raw materials and look at what the situation is. The question gives us, we need raw materials, of course. So let's look at it. It tells us here, let's look at the raw material situation, that we need 3 liters of materials for each DOM. That's the first point. So the thing is, I'm going to be producing these DOMs, and I need to therefore, if you like, I know what I need to produce. I'll come here. I need to produce these. This is in yellow, and so. And that's what links nicely with this. You can see here that this is what I need to produce over this period over here. Because if these are the DOMs I'm producing, I need raw materials of 3 liters times each of these. I need to produce this over here. Now, these are the amount of liters I need to make that production work. Now, I have, it tells us in the question, like I said, it starts the question tells us that you have an opening inventory of 16,500, and they do exactly the same thing. They tell you that raw materials must be 5 days gross production in the next period. So again, in principle, the same process applies. We are talking about 5 over 20 times, if you like, C23 with the next. So we know we're given opening, we're given closing, we know what we need to produce. So the question is, in terms of purchasing, I'll just put that in a different color. How do we, again, figure that out? We need to go out there and we need to buy some raw materials. So if you have opening inventory of, if you like, you have opening inventory of 16,000, if you have opening inventory of 16,500 already in house, and you need to have, you need to produce 61,200. If you like, you need that amount of liters to make this production for 16. Well, you're going to go out there first of all, technically, and just buy the difference, right? Because this is what you really need to make this production. So you go out there and buy the difference, and we could do it that way. So which is 61,200 minus 16,500, 44,700. But then you also need to buy enough to cover your closing inventory, and then you now do that. You now add that on to your 16,800, and you now have 61,500. So you can see that what you're buying really is a question of, okay, this is what I need to produce. I take that off and add your closing inventory onto it, and you have exactly the same sort of system and thinking again, and you apply that literally across again, if you like, through each of these periods. The important thing again, like I said, is getting opening inventory, getting closing inventory, and then you're fine, right? And then you're fine. So again, I suppose you could look at it from that point of view of saying, listen, I have opening inventory plus purchasing minus closing inventory is equal to what I actually release out there for production, which is 61,200. So your opening inventory was what, 16.5, your closing inventory was 16.8. How many items do you need to produce? So just go back to your financial accounting. You could think of it that way. You know, you have to release this in the end, right? So how many do you need to buy? You can think of it like that. Okay, right, great stuff. And then you just apply that right across the board as well for that. And that's kind of the second part of that. The next bit we'll be looking at costs of production, the cost of production, which isn't too bad. Okay, part C says, what is the cost of the materials purchased? The material purchases. So when we went out there, we went out to buy these things here. That's them, those things. We went out to buy them. What is the cost of that? And simply the cost of that is just the purchasing themselves times whatever it costs us. The question clearly tells us they're spending £8 a litre. Spending £8 a litre, literally multiplying that by 8, and you're getting there. That's where you're going. That's where you're going, multiplying that by 8. That's your cost of production. And so I literally just take this, whack that in, and drag this through because I'm just literally finding out what the cost is. There's no change, it's a stable cost of 8, and that's me building up my cost of production. That's my cost of production. Cool, great stuff. And that's that one. Pretty straight, not too bad. We'll look at labor right next. Cool, great stuff. And labor. So let's look at what they're telling us in labor. It says that Sinclair employs 70 workers, 40 hours a week. And therefore, in a 4-week period, we know that for each week, what's available to us, this is what's available to us, these figures here, 70 times 40 times 4. And that's what you have here. This is what is available to us. This is what is available to us. Now, let's look here. We're trying to produce, the question tells us that you spend half an hour on each DOM. And the DOMs here, you are producing these are your production. So you need to multiply. If you're going to be producing this, how much time are you spending on this line? You're literally multiplying them by 0.5, right? And that's what you're doing over here, multiplying this line here by 0.5. And when you do that, if you see, you can see here, you multiply this by 0.5. What you now have is this is the amount of labor required um, to get that production. But what do you have available to you? So in this area, I've put here shortfall and excess. So of course, if the labor you have available to you is more than your production, you have an excess, which is what you have here. Available labor. This is production. So you have 1,000 excess. Here it literally matches, and here there's a shortfall where production requirements are higher than availability, and hence we have a shortfall. And you can carry through and see what's going on here. And that's pretty much the core question there. We'll look at the costs in a second. Yeah, and let's conclude with let's conclude with those last 2 points here. So the cost of wages, literally, we are told that they are paid a basic wage of 240, that except when, of course, there's overtime. So in this case, that's your basic wage, 70 workers, 4 weeks, 240. If you like there, I'll just show that to you where it says that if you like in the question, it says here 70 workers are paid 240, guaranteed 240 a week, and overtime is only paid when necessary. So I suppose you can see from here, when you look at that schedule that I showed you earlier on, you would only have overtime arising, of course, by this period, by this third period. These first two, what you have is an excess, so not overtime, and there is no overtime requirement here. So just going back to this, that's just whatever they're being paid. It's guaranteed, and then of course there's guaranteed, and then of course that's £9 times those overtime hours of 700, and which is why you have 6,300 in that third period. Question 2 then goes on to sort of talk about, I mean, you can sort of see what's going on here. It says that explain and quantify the value of any possible overtime savings. So what we have here is that in period 3, we see that we have 700 hours of overtime in period 3, but what you have is a surplus in period 1. So potentially what you could do, right, is to make more items in period 1. So if you like, the argument here is how can we avoid, if you like, how can we avoid getting overtime used at all? So if we can make more items here, because you have a surplus of 1,000 hours, if you like, you have a surplus of 1,000 hours in period 1. So if in that period, if we just go back here to that period, technically, if you, well, I mean, the argument really is sort of saying that, I mean, you have more, you have 1,000 hours, you have 700. So whatever units you were going to make with that overtime, so you have 700 hours for overtime. 700 hours is 0.5 hours a DOM. That's 1,400 units, and you can easily make those 1,400 units in period 1 is what they're arguing. So make that, and you would avoid having to pay this overtime charge. In the process of doing this, you would need to think about storage, and if you like, financing costs. But I would argue that storage is probably the big one, and yeah, I think those are the main points, and the risk of obsolescence or the risk of theft. But you would need to definitely think of inventory space and whether or not the nature of the product will last all the way till 3 periods. So it might not be as simple as that, but that's one way of dealing with things. Cool, great stuff. And that is the end of question 52, I believe. Yeah, that is 52. And so, yeah, we move on to 53.